HIV has killed millions of people around the world, but doctors now report they're making progress in keeping people alive. New numbers show in 2022, the number of new HIV infections fell by 38% since 2010. But while rates are down globally, they're relatively static here in Canada. Joining us now with a closer look is primary care physician Dr. Gary Rubin. Doctor, good to have you on.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for having me.
So what is driving the decline in new infections of HIV around the world?
Well, there's a lot of reasons, but changes in medical management have been pretty key in that. Many individuals who are HIV positive today are on treatment options which consist of either one pill once a day or an injectable medication which can be given monthly or every 2 months. And so that certainly makes adherence a lot easier for our patients. There is a concept called U equals U, which means undetectable equals untransmissible. And most of the people on HIV therapy are undetectable, meaning we don't detect the virus in their bloodstream, meaning that they cannot transmit HIV, at least sexually. And an important statement from the World Health Organization that came out last week went one step further and said if you're on medication and you're undetectable, the risk of sexual transmission is actually zero. And that is really a game changer for a lot of countries, to get people onto therapy. We also have prevention therapies now as well. We have something called PrEP, which is pre-exposure prophylaxis, meaning people who are potentially at risk to acquire HIV sexually can also take a different one pill once a day regimen. And that almost certainly is effective to prevent HIV from being acquired.
It's really amazing when you think about how far we've come in several decades. Here in Canada, the numbers have stayed relatively stable, as I mentioned, since the 1980s. Why do we appear to be having such trouble bringing those numbers down?
Well, there's a global initiative called 90-90-90, which means 90% of HIV positive people should know their diagnosis. Of that, 90% should be on treatment, and of those, 90% should be undetectable. In Canada, the last statistics that I saw a couple of months ago said that we have 90% of our population who is HIV positive knows their diagnosis, but only 87% of them are on treatment. And of those, 95% are on undetectable. So we're doing a really great job of getting our people undetectable on treatment. Our problem is getting people on treatment. And I mean, Canada is a huge country. And when you have a huge country, you have huge issues. And if we look across the country, the transmission of HIV varies depending on where we are. So, for example, in British Columbia, Ontario, Quebec, and Atlantic Canada, the majority of new infections are male to male, whereas in Alberta, for some unknown reason to me, they're mostly male to female. And then in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, we see a lot of infections related to shared drug injection equipment. So you really have to target the population you're looking at to identify why we're not doing so well in those reasons, and then present strategies to solve that.
Even though we've seen progress on diagnosis and treatment, the stigma still exists. What can you tell us about the barriers?
Yeah, stigma has been around, and unfortunately, it hasn't gone away. And if anything, it's probably just as bad today as it has always been. There's the stigma not only around HIV, but the stigma around individual sexuality, their gender, their race. We see stigma all across the globe in women compared to men with HIV. There still exists criminality around HIV in some countries. In Canada, it's interesting that the stigma is so strange that I've seen individuals denied insurance benefits because they're on preventative medicine for HIV, which you would think would encourage insurance companies to give it to them. And then we also have the social factors of homelessness and no money for food. It's really difficult to expect somebody to have a safe place to store their medication and take their medication when they're living in a tent.
That's a good point. Dr. Gary Rubin, we appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this, be sure to subscribe here, or you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.